Right. Okay, so we have discussed about standard checkpoint, right? How we can do. What is the use of standard checkpoint? Uh, okay, you know, to validate the properties of the object, like whatever the object, like, to select the to check whether checkbox is selected or not, or to check button is enabled or not, to see the default value of an object, or to see the selected value of a drop down current value which is selected, or to see number of values are there in the drop down. Okay, or to validate, not to see, to validate all those. So we use standard checkpoint. Okay, so yesterday we also seen how we can implement the standard checkpoint. How did we do that? Okay, first we have to launch the application, or probably we can also ask to launch the application during recording. But only thing is here, okay, so whenever whenever you want to insert the checkpoint, the basic thing is you must have to record. Okay, so these checkpoints can be inserted during recording only. Not all the checkpoints, but 3 checkpoints, like database checkpoint or XML checkpoint from resource and file content. Except these 3, the remaining checkpoints will be enabled for you only during recording. Okay, so you can ask, whenever you start the application, you can ask your script, or you can ask your tool to launch the specific browser. Okay, so in case if you want. Or otherwise, if you say that no, I'm launching the browser manually, then it can record on that browser, or I have written the script, so during execution that browser can be launched. You don't need to go for that setting. Now what I'm doing is, here manually I'm launching the tool. 1 minute. Sorry, manually I'm launching the application. Okay, so what we'll do is, let us insert the standard checkpoint first. To insert the standard checkpoint, what we need to do first, okay, we must have to start recording. Then, so you must have to click on standard checkpoint. Just wait for a while. It's not responding. So select standard checkpoint, and then select the object, which object that you want to validate, and then so in the hierarchy it will display, and you have to select which property that you want to validate. You can select 1 or more properties. So what I'm trying to do is, I'm selecting whether the object is enabled or not, and then I'm selecting whether the value is empty value or not. Then during the checkpoint execution, whatever the values are there, now it is storing the expected values what we have given in the inside the checkpoint, or expected values. In case if you want to change the expected values later, what you can do is to change the expected values inside the checkpoint. Okay, how do you modify the checkpoint? So that's what the question is. Keep the cursor on the checkpoint, not everywhere. Okay, so not everywhere on the line, only on the checkpoint, anywhere here. Okay, so on the checkpoint, then right click on it, and can you see something called checkpoint properties here, and select checkpoint properties, and then you will see the properties which are selected as part of this checkpoint. And in case if you say later, what happened is requirement is changed. By default the object has to be disabled, should not be enabled. Then what you need to do, change the expected to 1 here. During execution the disabled property value must be 1. So like this you can change the properties of the checkpoint. But only thing is, the script whatever is generated here, that script may not be understandable properly. The script may not be understandable properly. Okay, so to update the checkpoint properties and all, then you must have to be expertise again. If you are not expertise, then okay, it will be little difficult for you to understand in which checkpoint we are validating what. Okay, so what we are validating in each checkpoint, it's a little difficult. That is a drawback of the checkpoint, using inbuilt checkpoint, one of the drawback. But yesterday we discussed about some other drawbacks, like the results which are generated by the checkpoint are not understandable by a non-technical person, and the script is not understandable, and will be can be implemented only during recording, and will be stored, all the objects will be stored only in the local repository. Checkpoints and objects will be stored in the local repository. So we have got various limitations like this, and no logical validations and all will be there in the checkpoint. But that what is the use of checkpoint? You can quickly insert the validation point. So whenever you have any validations in your application, you can quickly validate the or you can quickly insert the validation points. Okay, so you don't need to spend too much of time in writing the script. So that is the main advantage of using inbuilt checkpoint. But there are more than advantages, there are disadvantages are more. Okay, more than advantages, disadvantages are there. So that is the reason generally we don't prefer to built-in checkpoints. Always we try to prefer to the script. Now the same thing, how can we validate? How can we validate using script? Whatever we are validating through checkpoint, inbuilt checkpoint, then how we can write the script for this? Okay, so now before you go for script, first understand what exactly we are doing here in inbuilt standard checkpoint. What we are doing, we are validating the properties of the object, right? Properties in a sense, okay, we select certain properties and see whether those property values are containing expected value, those properties are containing expected values only or not. So those two properties in this case we validated are what are the disabled property and value property. So value property must be empty and disabled property must be 0. That's what we have validated. So same thing what you need to do is, okay, during runtime to write the script, during runtime retrieve the values from those two properties, disabled property and the value property, and validate those property values against your expected values. Same thing, whatever we have done there, we have to do through script. The question is, how can we retrieve the property value for these property values during the runtime? Getarvo property, right? So we need to use getarvo property to retrieve the property value. So getarvo property is the alternative for standard checkpoint. Remember, getarvo property is alternative. Then what I am doing is here, say chk disabled. First I will get the disabled property value. Then how do we do that? Then okay, first so let me take the page object into a variable so that I don't need to type it again and again. Then you say here opage dot web edit of username dot getarvo property of disabled. Okay, and str default value equals to opage dot web edit of txt username dot getarvo property of value. So what I am doing, I am retrieving the value property and value, and I am retrieving the disabled property value. Both I am retrieving here. Then what does it mean? Okay, why I am retrieving here? To validate both, right? Then okay, you should have expected with you. What should be there for disabled property? What should be there for value property? Okay. Then, so what you can do is, here you say, if chk disabled equals to 0, disabled is 0, and str default value is empty, then you can say reporter.report event make pass, then validate the default state of username field. Validate the default state of username field. Then, okay, so object has been enabled and contains empty value by default. That's it. Else you can say reporter.report event make fail either object is disabled or contains non-empty value by default. You know what I'm doing here? So what I'm doing is I'm just retrieving disabled property value and I'm retrieving value property value, and I have certain expectation, right? So value property must be empty and disabled must be 0. So I'm comparing with that. So CHK disabled is nothing but disabled property value. So STR default value is nothing but the default value property. Okay. Then so let it get execute. Yeah, so it's executed, and go to view and the last run results. To view last run results, and it says that it's passed, and you can see instead of earlier it was just showing checkpoints on so object. Then this time it is saying what is the step that you have expected, what is the step that you have executed, and it also will give you the detailed information what you have written in your script. So this report is little understandable compared with the previous one. Earlier it was whenever it is passed it will just say what property you have validated and what is the value, that's it. But it will be little difficult for the person who doesn't know anything about scripting or properties or anything. But when you do like this, then the report will be customized, right? You can send the customized reports to the result so that everybody can understand, anybody can understand it. Got it? Then similarly we will see for the actions. That's it. Let me log into the application and see, we will see some more validations. Okay. I'm adding username to the repository, and dot web edit of txt password dot set admin opus dot web button of login dot click. Okay, so it has to log into the application. So it's logged in, right? And then what I need to do is just I need to click on PIM link here. I just have to click on PIM link. I'll say opus dot link of dot click. Okay, so why I am doing this is, okay, when you click on PIM link, all the employee list will be displayed below. Okay, now what I need to do is first, okay, let us see what is the current value placed or what is the value selected for employee status or subunit, or one more is I want to make sure that, okay, so by default this delete button should be in disabled status until unless I select a checkbox. Okay, if I select checkbox, then only delete button will become enabled. Got what I am saying? By default delete button must be disabled, so because no employee has been selected. So I have two types of validations here. One is Okay. By default, all the checkboxes here, whatever are appeared here, by default, all the checkboxes must be in unselected mode. None of the employee. When you select this checkbox, that means that you have selected the employee. So by default, see, there are a lot of checkboxes placed in this. Each checkbox is for one employee. Getting what I am saying here? So there are a lot of checkboxes here, and every checkbox is designed for one employee, to select that employee, to delete or to modify employee, something for okay, to select the employee file. Then, so first what we need to do is, I have two validations in this case. One is, first thing, I want to check whether the button is disabled or not. That is one thing. After selecting the checkbox, button has to be enabled. That is first validation or the second validation. And one more validation I have is, by default, the checkboxes whatever we have here, all the checkboxes must be unselected as soon as the page is loaded. No checkbox has to be selected by default. Okay. Now when I want to do this validation, then okay, I'm not going to deal with one object, right? So we are not dealing with one object here. So what you need to do? We need to work with the collection. So it's not a single object validation we are doing, and multiple objects. So if I go with inbuilt checkpoint on this case, then how many are there? There are total 51 checkboxes are there. How can I say 51? Because total 50 employees have been displayed, and on the header column there is one. Okay. So I need to add all those 51 checkboxes to the repository when I want to insert on when I want to go with the inbuilt checkpoint, because remember that standard checkpoint will work only with one object at a time. Every time it worked with now, but I don't want to work with one object here. My situation is, or my validation is, I want to validate total 51 checkboxes. I want to validate total 51 to see whether any employee has been selected or not. In case if one checkbox is selected out of 51, then validation will be failed. Got what I am saying here? Now in this case, going for inbuilt checkpoint is not applicable. As I told, okay, inbuilt checkpoint will not work logically. But here there is certain logic required, because I don't want to, we are not dealing with a single object here. So in this case, how can we validate? How can we check whether all the checkboxes are in unselected mode, or is there any checkbox selected? Then logic goes like this. First what we do? First we will get the collection of all the checkboxes whatever we have here. First we need to get that collection. Then we need to loop through first checkbox to last checkbox. Then for each checkbox, what we have to do? We need to verify whether the checkbox is selected or not checkbox selected. So how can we check whether the checkbox is selected or not? Then there is one property called checked property. Okay, we have seen yesterday or some time back we have seen. So for every checkbox there will be a property called checked. The checked property will have 0 or 1. If the checked is 0, that means the checkbox is unselected. If the checked is 1, that means the checkbox is selected. So what I have to do here? First I need to get all the checkbox collection, loop it from first to last. Then for every checkbox in the collection, get checked property value and see whether the checked property value is 0 or 1. If it is 0, fine. If it is 1, then count that. So like this, all the checkboxes counted, number of checkboxes selected, it has to give me count. If the count is 0, then no checkbox is selected. If the count is more than 0, then some of the checkboxes have been selected. So just write a report saying that yes, so and so checkbox has been selected. Got what I'm saying here? So in this case, you don't need we can't go with the inbuilt checkpoint. We really can't go with inbuilt checkpoint. The reason because it's not a single object that we need to deal with. Okay, remember that. And this is one of the situation where we must have to go with the descriptive. All those we can sort out. So now the question is, how can we get how can we check whether all the checkboxes have been selected or not? Then so what we do is set O checkbox equals to description dot create. Then O checkbox dot add which property? Just say make class property as web checkbox. So what we are doing? I'm just creating a checkbox object. Then set O page equals to O checkbox collection equal to O page dot child objects of O checkbox. What we are doing here? We are getting the collection of checkboxes. Then just for now I'm giving a count, but we don't use message box actually, but only to understand the count, that's it, whether it is retrieving all the checkboxes or not. Then loop like this, for I equals to zero to O checkbox collection dot count minus 1. Then of I dot get arrow property of disabled. It should be checked. Okay, so it has to be checked property, not disabled. We are not verifying whether object is disabled or enabled. We are validating whether the checkbox is selected or not. So you can see the checked property here. So we are trying to get that. Then chk checkbox status. Just okay, I'm writing. This is the variable that I'm using. Then what you can do, if I'm using a variable called total selected equals to 0. Default value of total selected is 0, and if any of the checkbox is selected, for any of the checkbox this is returned as 1, then what you need to do? You got what I'm doing? So whatever the checkbox, I'm getting the status of every checkbox. If the status is returned as 1 for any of the checkbox, then I'm increasing total to 1, 1 plus 1, 1 plus 1. Depends on number of checkpoints, number of checkboxes selected. There's many times this checked will return as 1, right? Then there's many times that total selected will be updated. There's many ones will be added to that. Then after the loop, what you can do is, if total selected is remain 0, then what does it mean? It never goes inside, right? If it is okay, if all the checkboxes have been selected, all the checkboxes have been unselected, then it won't go inside. That condition will not be satisfied even once. So total selected will remain 0. But if any of the checkbox is selected, then it, for at least one checkbox, that condition will be satisfied, then the total selected will not be 0, will return 1 or 2, or depends on number of checkboxes have returned as 1 for the checked property. Okay, so if total selected is 0, then you say that reporter dot report event make pass. If it is 0, then validate the status of all the employees, or you can also see verify that no employee has been selected by default. Okay, so there was all the employees are in unselected mode by default, or no employee has been selected by default. Anything you can write a meaningful message. Then in case if it is not 0, then what you do is you say reporter dot report event make fail total, how many total selected, just writing a report. Have been selected by default. In case if you want to take the screenshot of the page, you can do that. Okay, you can do that. This is not required for now. Let us see. Okay, O page has to be there, right? O page should be commented out. Total 52 checkboxes are there. Let us see whether so it says that okay, so there is, it's failed. Verify that no employee has been selected by default. Total 1 checkpoint have been selected. So there is a checkbox which was selected by default. It says total 52 are there. Which checkbox has been selected by default? Just a moment. So total 51, and there is one more it is showing. What is that? Let's do one thing. Let me change the resolution. Let me change the resolution to this for a while. Is there any extra checkbox somewhere you can see here? No, right? No other checkboxes there. But it says that total 52 are there. Total 52. Let's do one thing. Let us instead of directly getting in the page child objects, actually the employee list is one table, right? We'll go with this table. Okay, there might be some there could be one more object inside the page, so we will go with only that employee list. Dot web table. Web table of ID. Dot child objects. So instead of getting in the page directly, I am getting in the page object and see. This time how many are there? So it should be this time 51. Yeah, this time it is 51. So that means not in the employee list. Outside employee list somewhere there is a checkbox. So sometimes that even the checkbox is invisible, but still this child objects will retrieve that particular object also, even though it is invisible. So that's how we need to judge. Okay, sometimes if it is when you take the entire page object, there could be some more objects also may come, unwanted objects. So you need to filter out. So instead of taking the entire page, I am taking only that employee list, because my validation goes only on the employee list. And this time see the result and see. This time it is passed. Okay, so all the employees are in unselected mode by default. In case if there is an employee unselected, now is there any guys selected? then you can just highlight it. If it is checkbox is 1, what I'm doing is count it, and whatever the checkboxes says that status as 1, total 51 are there. You can see whatever the checkboxes selected, those are being highlighted. So total 2 are there, right? Then it has to say total 2 checkboxes have been selected. Then view last run results. Total 2 checkboxes have been selected. So like this you can validate. Whenever you want to validate the collection of objects, not a single object, then by using descriptive programming you can get the collection of the objects, then loop through first object to last object, and then you can retrieve a specific property, okay, and then validate whether that property contains the expected value or not for each object. One of the situation where you must have to go with scripting and we cannot go for inbuilt checkpoint, and at the same time you cannot go with object repository approach, and you must have to go with the descriptive programming only. Okay, so you can say, when did you go for descriptive programming? You can tell these situations. Okay, so there are a lot of places where we, instead of getting the single object, we need to get the collection of objects, and then probably we need to loop through collection of objects and all. So in such cases we have gone for descriptive programming. And then so you can also say that why are you not going for inbuilt checkpoints, and then why are you going for scripting? Because inbuilt checkpoint is faster. I mean, you're able to implement fast and easy without any effort. But when you're writing the script and all, then you have to take some pain, right? So you have to write the script, and then it takes some effort in writing the script and all. Then why are you taking more efforts and why are you taking pain in writing script rather than using inbuilt checkpoint? Then the reason, because okay, even inbuilt checkpoint is I can implement quick, I can implement fast, but I won't get any flexibility in it, and I won't get any reusability of it, right? And the understandability will miss out. We can't understand the script generated by inbuilt checkpoint. We can't understand the result generated by inbuilt checkpoint. So this is the reason why we are not going for, and this inbuilt checkpoint will not work with the logics. I mean, logical validation and all will not be there. Here it's not a straightforward validation, it is a logical validation, right? And we are not taking just single object and validating that property. What we are doing, we need to write certain loops and all to implement the validation point whatever we have got. So if when you want to go with such logical validations and all, then you must have to go for customized checkpoints where you cannot go for inbuilt checkpoint. Getting what I am saying here? Okay, so this is what. Then next what you need to do is, I said by default delete button has to be disabled, and then it has to be enabled after that, right? Then okay, what you need to do is, assume there is a checkbox selected, it's continuity. If total selected is not equals to 0, then what you do is, if the checkboxes are not selected, I want to unselect all the checkboxes. You got what I am saying? So because I cannot directly implement the checkpointer, so by default it has to be disabled. When there is no employee selected, this button has to be disabled, right? To validate that, what I need to do is, okay, first I need to validate all the I need to unselect all the employees whoever have been selected. Then what I will do is, how do you unselect all the checkboxes? Again, loop through I equals to 0 to count -1, then checkbox of I dot set. You know what I am doing here? All the checkboxes, set off means unselecting the checkbox. Or instead of writing one more loop, what you do is, after counting that the checkbox is selected, then for the next validation all the checkboxes have to be unselected, right? Then what you do is here, you know what I am doing? In case if the checkbox is selected, I am unselecting it. Sorry? Okay. Yeah, clear now? Okay, so now what I am doing there, okay, after checking whether the checkbox is selected, in case if it is selected, just highlight it, then count it, and then unselect it. Okay, so there itself. So in the single loop itself I can do everything. So first I will count how many are there, whatever the checkbox is selected, after counting it I am unselecting it, so that I will get the I will be prepared for the next validation here. Then the next validation is, what has to be, after completing this loop all the checkboxes will be unselected, whatever are there, right? Then whatever are selected, then next is delete button, right? So how do you check whether delete button is enabled or disabled? Then ch disabled equals to delete button, disabled equals to opus dot, it's a web button, of delete button dot get arrow property of which property? Disabled property, right? If this disabled property returns 0, then report event make pass, then verify the status of disabled button, sorry, delete button when no employee is selected. Okay, so delete button is disabled when there was no employee selected, else you can say report event make fail delete button is enabled even though there was no employee selected. So delete button is enabled even though there was no employee selected. So in case if it is returning 0, that means okay, disabled must be 1, right? It has to be disabled. So disabled must be 1, then only we can say that button is disabled. If disabled is 0, what does it mean? Button is enabled. So what should be the state? What we are validating here? Button should be disabled by default, right? So what will be our expected here? Disabled, it must be disabled. That means disabled property should return 1. Then after that what I will do is browser dot page dot, I'll say web checkbox of, you know what I'm doing there? Index of 4, what does it mean? Any fifth checkbox, that's it. No matter what checkbox it is, just select the fifth checkbox. Then what I need to do after selecting it, again I need to validate the delete button status, right? Then this time it has to be delete button must be 0 because it has to get enabled. Then verify the status of the delete button when one or more employees are selected. Then delete button is enabled when one or more employees are selected. So same thing now. Make fail, then you can say delete button is disabled even though one or more employees have been selected. You got what I am saying here? Then no employee has been selected here, right? No employee has been selected. Oh, so there is one more employee has been selected. Fine. So first validation, all the checkpoints should be, all the employees should be unselected. That has to be passed, and all the validation should be passed. You can see I said fifth checkbox, right? Index of, there was one more checkbox which was hidden, so that was index 0, and then in the list fourth checkbox has been selected, overall fifth. Then go to view and last on results, and it says that it's been passed. Then verify the delete button when one or more has been passed. Verify the status of delete button when no employee has been selected, passed, and verify that no employee has been selected by default, passed. Then in case, okay, if there is any employee has been selected, by default assume that this is the default selection which was there. Then first validation should be failed, like okay, so by default some employees have been selected. So like this generally we do the object level validations, like not only single. If it is only single object, directly you can say that that object can be added or can be used or can be written through descriptive. Then it says so and so object dot get arrow property of so and so property, depends on your validation. Then next, in case if you want to deal with multiple objects at the same time, like in this situation, what you need to do, by using description.create, you need to create the description object, and then you need to deal with collection of objects. And this is where object repository is not applicable. At the same time, inbuilt checkpoint also is not applicable. You cannot implement the inbuilt checkpoint. You must have to go with customized. So like this, you can validate individual objects, or we need to validate the collection of objects. Okay, depends on the validation point. Got it? So you got the difference where you must have to go with the descriptive, and got the difference or understood the drawback of inbuilt checkpoints where you can't use the inbuilt. Very important to understand, because when you say something like they will ask you whether have you used inbuilt or have you gone for scripting for validations. Then you say that yeah, we have used customized checkpoints and we have gone for inbuilt. Then you must have to judge, or you must have to justify your statement there, right? So how do you justify or how do you defend that? Then by giving the examples. Okay, so why we can't go, or why, what are the drawbacks of that, right? So if you can't understand this, then you will not be able to defend yourself there. Okay, so we will stop here today.